Hi, my name's Mike Riley, maybe appliance. I wanted to do a video talking to the techs out there about the R12 to R134a conversion that you all, not you all, but so many believe is not possible. Especially, I keep running every day. I keep running customers that I supply parts to. I provide the upgraded 134A components restoration kits for the SubZero refrigerators and freezers because R12 systems should not be quote fixed or denied to be fixed by SubZero techs, which is happening constantly, telling them they need to buy a new one for $10,000 to $18,000 because it's not fixable. I just got another email from a customer in Waukegan, Illinois, and the tech told him, he was a SubZero authorized tech, told him that for one, the oil can't be gotten to replace in the system, and two is that it has to be a R12 compressor put back in. You can't put R134a compressor. This is nonsense. First of all, the first comment speaks volumes about this technician. Two things. One is he's not a domestic refrigerator repairman to make a comment about putting oil and adding oil to a system. We don't do that, nor have we ever done that. If you're doing that, you're doing things way, way wrong. And let me qualify this so there's guys out there going, yes, you can, but it's commercial, okay? I'm not talking about commercial. I'm talking about a SubZero refrigerator, GE, Whirlpool, whatever brand refrigerator that goes in a home, okay? Not commercial refrigeration. There's a difference between refrigeration. Just the word refrigeration becomes a commercial connotation. And if you've been in the business long enough, you know that. And if you don't, then you need to do some learning to understand even the simplest of terms and words. Really speak volumes about what your knowledge is, especially to us older guys out here and girls that do service and done so long. There's so much learning on YouTube, and there's good learning on YouTube, but there's also horribly tragic learning on. I mean, you get people now that are saying, yeah, I learned it on YouTube. I learned everything on YouTube. That's scary. That's honestly very scary. You learned how to be a technician on YouTube because you're trusting that somebody else or a couple people, if you don't get the right information, you're just taking that as gold and running with it. And that's the problem with this R12 to 134a conversion has been just blown up over 30 years that you can't do it, it'll sludge. And I'm going to say it once again. When they made the comment 30 years ago, when R12 was banned, the comment was about adding 134a freon. You can't add 134a freon to an R12 system with an R12 compressor in it that has R12 oil. That was the issue. The refrigerators coming off the manufacturing plants, out of the manufacturing plants now, don't have R12 compressors in them with R12 oil. And the oil comes in the compressor, so it's never added or removed. Only in commercial is that when you start getting with some of these larger compressors. You don't do that in domestic. So this technician, right off the bat, I knew he didn't know what he's talking about. and he's with the SubZero authorized in Waukegan, Illinois. The customer shared the information with me. He doesn't know what he's talking about, and I wouldn't trust him. And he said he quoted the customer price to put R12 compressor back in, and evaporator, heat exchanger, and dryer with an R12 compressor. R12 cannot be purchased anymore. It's banned. And they got people buying from Mexico and saying they found some and whatever. It's not the direction you want to go because it's banned. They don't make it anymore. So you don't put in something that's been captured and quote cleaned. You don't do that. That's a disservice to the customer. You convert the system or put in hotshot or blended. You don't do that, guys. You just don't do that. The reason you don't do it is because the R12 compressor is designed to compress R12 by the engineers. It was designed by the engineers, and I happen to be an electrical engineer myself, graduated at Arizona State University. But I've been a service tech, full-line service tech, service company owner for 40 years. I've been out there doing those jobs. But I also have the engineering degree. The compressor is designed to compress R12. It wasn't designed to compress hotshot or any of these blendeds. And the worst thing you could ever do is put reclaimed freon back into a system. It's never going to be as clean as it should be. I don't care if somebody said they cleaned it or not. You don't trust that. There's too many acids and everything else that could be in there, even particles of metal or whatever. So don't do that to a customer. Okay? Let's stop doing this half or wrong fixes for customers. Fix it right. And the right repair for an R12 or R134 is to upgrade it to the R134a compressor. The oil comes with the compressor, guys. Think about it. The oil's not poured in the system. The oil, you take a compressor out. Anybody that's ever taken a compressor out, if the stupid thing tips over, or if you're unlucky and you have some pressure in there and it blows the oil out at you and catches you on fire, which has happened to me, it spits the oil all over you and you're covered with flames when you got a torch going. You know, you get the flames out quick. There's no reason to freak out. The customer usually freaks out, but it's just very little oils. But the point is it's coming from inside the compressor. It's 3 ounces in most compressors, domestic refrigerators. So it's not like you don't have any oil pooled in the system. If it is, it's caught in the evaporator, and you're going to replace the evaporator anyways. You do a restoration. You replace the compressor, the evaporator, heat exchanger, and dryer. And why are you going to do that? Because it's 20 or 30 years old. Because the compressor, it's run its course. Maybe it's not working anymore. But even if the evaporator's got a leak in it, it's because there's moisture and corrosion from the inside of the refrigerator or freezer that's causing the corrosion. Same with the heat exchanger. Anybody that knows that they have the slow, what we call 2-year leak, if you don't know what a 2-year leak is, that term, then you haven't been around a while either. That's the term that was given to the really, really tiny leaks you can't find. They're so small that we call it a 2-year leak, and usually you can't find it. But common sense and education tells you that if it's not blowing the freon out in 3 seconds, and it's taken a week, couple weeks, couple months before it drops the charge and stops cooling again, then it's an extremely small leak. And that can only be on the low side. Because the high side would blow it out at 125, 135 pounds. It'd be gone in a day. Okay? So I'm trying to explain this really thoroughly because it just amazes me that, and refrigerators are a tough one to, I have a training school, and I have techs come in from all over the world, and I train them one-on-one. And that's why I'm being so thorough, because Sometimes the guys don't really put two and two together that, well, it's lasting three months, so, and then finally it isn't cooling. I put freon in it. It's a slow leak, dude. It's a really tiny leak, and it's in the low side because it's running 8 to 12 pounds pressure, not 135, or it would be gone in a day or even a couple hours. Okay? So if it's a really small leak, it's always on the low side. Almost always. Or it's inside the cabinet where it's compressed with insulation and maybe holding it back so that, and I've had that happen where it was a lengthy leak for a month or so. It was actually in the high side line inside the unit, the cabinet, but it was so compressed with insulation that it was minimizing the leakage. So anyways, the compressor is the one that has the oil. So get this straight in your head, please. We got to get this over with. This misunderstanding of 30 years has just got to be, it's got to be thrown out. You guys are losing jobs, and a lot of you guys are doing the wrong repair, putting an R12 compressor back in when you don't even have the freon to go with it. And putting blended and hotshot and everything else is not it's not the proper repair. You're ripping off the customer because it's not going to be efficient. It wasn't designed to compress those freons, and it doesn't compress them properly. It still cools, but not as efficient as it was with the proper refrigerant. So there's no difference between the refrigerator you have that's R12 and the one coming off the assembly line now. There's no difference, except for electronics and all the extras. Okay, forget that. Talking sealed system here. There's zero difference, except the compressor. R12 compressor, now R134a compressor. Evaporator, heat exchanger, everything's the same. So when they converted to R134 systems, they just changed the compressor. That's all you're doing. The same thing they did with cars. And they've done billions of cars, probably tens of billions of cars, since 1991. It was called retrofitting. And there's no fancy stuff that goes on. The key factors were pulling the compressor that has the wrong oil in it, putting a new orifice. They have a little bit different filtering system. So you filter orifice, you change that. You blow the system out and recharge it with, put a R134A car compressor in there and R134A freon, and it works beautiful because it's compressing the proper freon. It's an R134A compressor. Compressing R134, it was designed to work with. And that's really critically important, you guys. You can't be just putting whatever freon in a system. It's not efficient. You're not doing a customer any service. You're doing them a disservice. Okay? So fix it right. You put a 134A compressor in just like the factories are doing. The other components are all the same. Okay? It's not going to sludge because you're pulling the R12 compressor with the R12 oil in it. The R12 oil comes in the compressor when you take it out. Tip it over, you're going to find out. It's in the compressor. You're not leaving the oil in the system. You don't have to recharge it with oil. You don't have to find the proper oil. It comes with the compressor. It's already in the compressor. That's why they're pressurized when you get them with the rubber stops. And if you don't have pressure when you pull out the first rubber stop, don't use the compressor. Return it and get another one. And you may not know that. It has got to have pressure in it. Okay? So the R12 compressor should never be put in anymore. And if you go on my website, refrigeratorpartreplacements.com or restoreyoursubzero.com, you're going to find that I don't supply R12 compressors anymore. I have the crossover that goes right to the R134a compressor for the R12 system that you have. If it's a 532, I've got the replacement compressor, and actually I have restoration kits, which are the compressor, heat exchanger, evaporator, and the dryer. And if it's 20, 30 years old, you really want to replace all of those, because the evaporator and heat exchanger are probably going to have corrosion already. And if they don't leak already, they have pinholes in them, they're going to start leaking. So don't put a compressor in and leave it at that. Replace the whole sealed system. The condenser does not need to be replaced. I've left this out in previous videos about the condenser, but I keep getting questions about it. Why don't you replace that? Well, it's obvious. For a service, tech that knows what he's doing, it's a steel condenser. It's outside in the outside air. It's not in a moist environment. It's not going to corrode. Corrosion and getting pinholes from corrosion in the evaporator and heat exchanger are why they get replaced. The condenser, unless you shoot a bullet through it or cut it with something or punch it with a punch and break through the steel tubing, you don't ever have to replace it. It's just not necessary. It's a waste of money. You can blow it out. And there's very few condensers out there that have ever gotten plugged up. And Viking and KitchenAid have one it's the same, basically the same condenser. It was no longer available. I am actually manufacturing it now for the Viking and KitchenAid models that use it's the same condenser. And they're available now. But they got plugged up for some reason, and so I started remanufacturing them. Now they're available, and otherwise people were having to replace $10,000 refrigerator, $18,000 refrigerator, but now they don't have to. There's no reason to replace a SubZero because it's an R12 system. Stop listening to this garbage and believing this garbage on YouTube, and over 30 years it's been perpetuated because people misunderstood what was said when they said it. They took it as, you can't convert an R12 system to 134A. Yeah, you can. They said you can't put R134A in a R12 with an R12 compressor. You can't put R134A freon in with an R12 compressor. That was what the statement was. But it got twisted around that you can't convert from R12 to 134A, which is wrong. Yes, you can, because you're not leaving the R12 compressor room with the bad oil. The oil is not compatible with R134A. That's the issue. So you take it out, the R12 compressor with all the oil is already in it, still in it. Take it out, discard it. Put in a new 134A compressor. Blow the lines out after you put an evaporator and a heat exchanger in the dryer. Blow the line out. Use nitrogen. There's not much left in there. If anything, it might be just residue of that oil. It's not an issue anyways, because when you put the filter dryer on, after you blow it out, blowing it out with nitrogen is going to blow it all out of there anyways. Oil has a heavy viscosity, heavy density. It's going to blow it right out of there. It's not going to stay anywhere. You could blow it out of the lines before you put the evaporator in if you have a process tube adapter kit. And if you don't, you should have one. They're expensive, but it allows you to, they have rubber fittings. It allows you to put the rubber fitting on to the copper line and then on the other end, you've got where you put your gauge hose, and you can actually blow through that line with your nitrogen. And it's a rubber fitting in there. It seals, so it won't leak around where you attach it to the tubing. Process tube adapter kit. I've had one for 30 years because none of these issues are ever going to beat me. You got to stop letting the wrong information beat you, because you're doing this customer just a terrible disservice by not doing the repair properly and being afraid and believing all this stuff that's just not true. use your common sense and go through, listen to the video again. It's just the R12 compressor with the R12 oil that's the issue. You got to take it out of the system. Once you do that, you blow the lines out, you put the R134a compressor in, put the evaporator in, put the heat exchanger in. They're already clean. They haven't been in the system. So you have short lines and the condenser to blow out. There's nothing to blow out. You replace the filter dryer too. You see what I'm saying? There's nothing left in the system. You're not going to have bad oil in there. It's in the old compressor. It's already out. Okay? Then when you recharge it, it's best to recharge. You can do it by the tag if you want, but you're probably not going to be exact because it may be a little bit different in charge, and that's fine because it's going to compress everybody knows that it used to be 10, 15 ounces, and now the new ones are R134a are about 7 or 8 ounces, maybe 10 at the most, but 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. So if you do it by tag, you're probably going to overcharge it possibly. So I don't like to do it that way. Do it by your gauges. What's wrong with that? You don't need to worry about superheat. We don't deal with superheat domestic refrigerators. Refrigeration does because they have expansion valves. Our metering system is the capillary tube. There's no expansion valve. On commercial, they got an expansion valve. Air conditioning, they got expansion valves. And it's more of a critical charge. In other words, critical charge, what I mean by that, I'm going to be really specific here because you guys are seeming to misunderstand everything. Critical and charge, it means that you have to be almost exact. Everybody knows it's done sealed systems on refrigerators. You can be less or you can be more and it still works fine. It doesn't have to be perfectly charged. But if you do it by gauges, you're going to get it there. Okay? Low side runs at about 8 to 12 pounds. Depends on ambient temperature, the room temperature. I'm going to be more specific. And the high side runs at around 125 to 135 pounds. Once you get the high side up to 125, 135, that low side's just going to be 8 to 12. It is. It's going to be in that range. And then when you have the cover off the evaporator, you're going to look at it, it's frosted all the way to the bottom. It's fully charged and it's cooling, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Ice makers and commercial have to be almost perfect charge, or they'll freeze back to the compressor, or they won't cool properly. But refrigerators, very forgiving. Okay? As long as that pressure is 8 to 12 and 125 to 135, if it's hotter in the room, ambient temperature, then it might be 135. You know, if you're in Arizona and you're in a garage, it might be, 135, 140. I don't like to see it get up to 140 or so, but it's definitely going to be at least 135 possibly if it's in the garage. It's hot in there. It might be a little bit higher, but you don't want to get that low side up too high past 12. You start getting up to 15, 20, and guys do that, and you're going to blow a valve. You just can't do that. Typically speaking, if you're up at 15 or 20, your high side's going to be so hot it can't even convert to 0 degrees when it inlets through the evaporator from the capillary. It's just too hot. The hotter it is coming through the capillary into the evaporator, the warmer it is going to be in the evaporator. The cooler it is in the heat in the capillary tube going into the evaporator, the more cold you're going to get in the evaporator. If it's too hot in the capillary, because the capillary is a small tube designed to be a certain size, diameter inside, that creates a certain pressure, just to keep this simple, and it's hot. Okay? You don't feel it hot because it's soldered to the suction line, so it absorbs the heat. But that's your hot. from the compressor. It's the high side. It goes in, and when it gets into that huge environment, the freon goes into that huge tube, which is 3/8, 5/16. From that really tiny tube, the pressure changes dramatically. Now, if you watch the news and watch the weather forecaster, they say it all the time. The pressure rises, the temperature's rising. The pressure drops, the temperature's dropping. Low pressure system, it's cooling down. High pressure system, it's warming up, heat wave. Pressure and temperature are directly related. So if the pressure goes up, the temperature is going to go up. If the pressure goes down by the capillary, its pressure's high here, but it goes down dramatically when it gets into the evaporator, pressure drops dramatically. It might be 90 degrees here, and it becomes 0 because of what the engineers figured out from that tiny tube, how the diameter of it, to how big this has to be to inject and to make that pressure drop just enough to create 0 degrees on the inlet. That's where the 0 degrees comes from. It's not magic. It's not magic. It's the pressure drop going into the evaporator. Okay? That's how it works, if you ever wondered. And I'm sure a lot of guys don't know that. You know, it gets into thermodynamics, into engineering. Well, I'm an engineer. So, and I don't like being one. But I understand, that's why I do service, and always have since I got my degree. I need to be out here on the application side. But that's why I'm able to explain it to you, because in simple terms, it's that simple. There's no magic involved. It's just physics. Pressure rises, temperature rises. Pressure drops, temperature drops. That's where you get your 0 degrees, okay? So once it fills up the evaporator all the way, that's what you're worried about. Now, if you want to do a test on an evaporator, right there at the inlet where the capillary comes in, right here, you see it on the news all the time where a guy will get his kid will get his tongue stuck on a telephone pole or something. Lick your finger and touch the evaporator that's frosting. Lick it and just touch it, and then take it off. Or you can keep it on there for a second or two. If that frost starts to dissipate really fast, you're either way low on charge or your compressor's bad, because you're not really truly 0 degrees, because your finger temperature is dissipating the heat. It's absorbing your temperature, and you shouldn't be able to do that. That 0 degrees should be so strong that it makes your finger cold, and you absorb the coldness rather than absorbing your finger temperature and melting the frost. So you shouldn't melt the frost and start to go away. The frost goes away. If you do, there's a problem. It could be the compressor, or your charges is all screwed up. You don't have enough freon in there at all. But it's also test, see if a compressor, the valves are going to be bad because it's not compressing well enough to create a really, really strong 0 degrees that's resistant to heat. Because if you think about it, when it's cooling, all those coils with the warm air coming in, back in and circulating, if that warm air comes back in, circulates, it's going to defrost all these coils. If it can do that with your finger, it's not going to cool properly. It can't do that. It can't defrost the coils as the warm air circulates through the evaporator. Okay? Something else that makes it simpler to diagnose. Just common sense. Okay? So the main thing is stop doing these customers. They get a hold of me and they just really are just, their mind's blowing that there's so many technicians out there that have no clue what they're talking about. And SubZero will not, their techs will not, they will not accept this, because SubZero from the top says we can't do it. And I think they actually know the truth, but they just want to sell new products. I can't prove that. But every technician in every city I hear about says the same thing. And this technician's telling you he can't find the oil for it. It's not, you can't get it. So we couldn't do that way anyways. Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's unbelievable. So, I'm actually looking at the email here he sent. He said parts cannot be had to convert from R12 to 134a. Now, that's not true at all. I sell them all. And all the other parts are the same. There's no different R12 evaporator. It's just the same evaporator. The heat exchanger is the same. There's no specific R124 or 134 and one specific R12 heat exchanger or evaporator. They're all the same. They work with whatever freon you put in them. That's why I said the system totally is the same on the assembly line. The only difference is the compressor. It's like guys that are motorheads, gearheads. You can't put a different motor in that car, or different transmission in that car. Tell a race car driver that. He's going to look at you and he's going to probably tell you you're stupid. Of course, they do it all the time. Because the rest of the car is the same. You don't have to put different tires and whatever on because you put a new motor in it. Are you kidding? That's how stupid this sounds. All the rest of the parts do not need to be replaced. Or if it's 20, 30 years old, you want to because they're corroded. And you don't want the customer to have to call you again to replace the evaporator when you just put a compressor in it. So do them right. I have the rates on these restoration kits, which includes a compressor, heat exchanger, evaporator, and dryer, are very cheap. And then when you add your labor onto it, it's a big job, but you're not going to warranty the parts. The parts are from me. They buy them from me. And they're the exact parts, so don't worry about that. I'm a manufacturer of evaporators as well. I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for 10 years or so and selling all over the world, and I don't ever have them come back. For one, they don't leak because they've been tested 3 times before they go out, and they're the proper replacements. They're not aftermarket. They're not seconds. They're not used. They're the proper replacement parts. So you put the R12, or get rid of the R12 compressor with the bad oil, put the R134a compressor in it with the good oil in it. It already comes in it. Blow the lines out. If you want to do that before you put the other components in, that's fine, because then you have less lines to blow and less distance. Blow the condenser out. And it's easiest to do if you have the process tube adapter kit, because you can squeeze right onto the line and attach your hose to the other side and blow it with nitrogen or whatever you want to use. And then put the evaporator, heat exchanger, and dryer in. And you have a brand new system, just like it came off the assembly room floor. And it's compressing with the proper freon. So it's efficient. One of the guys told a customer, oh, it runs forever. That's not true. Not true at all. It takes too long to cool. That's not true at all. These SubZeros are so small inside. Actually, the people are getting ripped off by buying them. They probably should be about $1,500 for a brand new SubZero, because they're not that big. I mean, they're not. Look inside. There's not that much room in there. And they cool down extremely fast. Probably the fastest of any brand on the market. GE's, some of theirs take forever to cool down when you replace a system component. You know, you can't even tell with those new metering valves on them whether it's cooling or not. You just got to let it go. Put the right proper charge in and let it go. And a day later, it's like it's cooling finally. These cool in 20 minutes. The evaporator's full of it's frosted, the whole evaporator. And then you want to put the cover on because it warms the evaporator up, and it'll affect the pressures. So put the cover on, then watch your pressures and judge it from there where you leave it with the panel, evaporator cover panel on. So the evaporator's covered and the air is flowing through with the door shut, flowing through the evaporator and circulating. Okay? So please, if you didn't get it the first time from this video, I'm not putting you down. But listen again, because everything I'm telling you is just absolute common sense. And I said it in a way so that you would go, wow, that's true. I mean, the oil's in the compressor. So if I'm taking the compressor and the oil out, which are the problem, both of them, I can put the proper freon in, just like it's coming off the assembly line, and they're going to have a brand new refrigerator. And it's going to be efficient. Not putting an R12 compressor in with the wrong freon. Come on, guys, stop doing that. That's not the repair. That's not the proper repair. Don't do that. It will not sludge. I've been doing them since 1991. I've done thousands of them. Never had an issue. And I don't do a big job about blowing it out. I don't make a big deal out of it. You just blow the lines out like it's no big deal. Put a new dryer on, put the components in, put the vacuum pump on. That's going to suck it out too. Any contamination that might still be in there. You know that. And you don't have to go out at 200 to 400 microns. Once again, that's for metering device systems, ice makers, that you got to make sure that there's absolutely nothing. It's all the way down to 400 microns. We don't have to do that on these. 15, 20 minutes on the vacuum pump. The biggest thing is to get in any air that might have got in there, out of there, any moisture, contaminants, whatever, and it'll suck it out of there if it didn't get it out, blowing it out. Or when you took the valves off or whatever, you got some in, whatever. And then check and make sure you have no leaks, and then charge it. And you're done. You're out of there. And they have a properly repaired refrigerator. I can't believe that there's so many of you still doing this. Telling the customer that you can't do it. And refusing to believe that it was just totally misunderstood what they meant. You can't put 134a freon in with an R12 compressor. Of course you can't. That's what they were talking about. You can't leave that R12 compressor in with the bad oil in it and put 134a freon in it. No way, you can't do that. That's going to cause a problem. You take out the R12 compressor, which is the problem child, and the oil that's with it. You don't have to take the oil out separate. It comes out with the compressor because it's in the compressor. Okay? And you put a new R134a compressor in. Blow the lines out. Put the new components in. Evacuate it. Recharge it. You're done. And do it, recharge it by gauge pressures. 8 to 12 on the low side. 125, 135 on the high side. And just verify visually that the evaporator is all frosted all the way to the bottom. Cover back on. You get out of there. Go on to your next call. You're done. And there's no issues with it. You're not going to get a call back. It won't happen. They're going to be they're going to be blown away. They'll probably tip you. Because they just saved $10 to $15 to $18,000 by you doing the job properly and not telling them the same garbage that all the uneducated techs are telling them, or the ones that aren't telling them the truth, whether they know the truth or not. And I think some of the SubZero guys do, but they want to sell new refrigerators. They've been told to do that. So, but the unfortunate thing is there's still a lot of guys out there, like yourself possibly, that still believe that lie. And I want to dispel that. Just, it was a misunderstanding, and please understand, take everything that I've said and make sense of it, because once you do, you'll realize, wow, I can start doing the repair. I can do a lot of jobs. I turn down SubZero that are 20 years old all the time. There's 800, there's 1,200. Wow, and I don't even have to supply the parts. The customer can get the parts, the restoration kit from me, and you do the labor. I'll cover the warranty on the parts. As long as I know, and in a lot of cases, if I am a little bit concerned by talking to the customer, I might ask them to have you talk to me because I'm the manufacturer. And I'm not going to tell you what to do, just like this video. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page so that when you install the parts that I manufacture and supply, that there's no problems for the customer. That you didn't misunderstand anything, that you know, if there's any tips or tricks I can give you from experience. I'm not one to tell anybody what to do. I just want you to understand the facts so that you can be more successful in your repairs, and do a lot more repairs and make a lot more money on systems that can be fixed. Would you want to get a new refrigerator for $18,000, then get new wood panels made for another whatever cost, outrageous cost, and then have your cabinets all redone because the old new refrigerator is different size? That's what's happening to these people. This is what you're doing to people by not having the right information. You could easily repair this and not cause this upon them. You're causing them. I mean, you could cost them $30,000 to $100,000 in restoring the kitchen. You know, maybe 30, 50, whatever it costs, because they're not the same size, and they're going to have to change. And doing all the wood panels, the custom panels on the doors. Please start doing the customer service by getting the right information and repairing it for them. You know, it's a long day. It's a long job. Compressor, evaporator, heat exchanger, and dryer. But if you get to it, you can get it done in about 4 to 6 hours. And you make good money for it. Good money. You know, you could actually do 2 calls possibly. I mean, 1 call. I don't usually do more than 1 call when I have one of those jobs. But it's good. It's a good day's work. $600, $800, $1,200 for a day's work? Are you kidding? That's what you're losing out on right now. Okay, so I'm hoping that, and the other thing I need is for you guys to contact me, free referrals for my customers. Whatever city or whatever you live, wherever you live as a service company and do service, contact me, give me your information so that I can share it with customers that are in your area. And I have more resources of who will do these repairs because customers have a difficult time finding somebody. So pass it on if you want free calls. It's not Home Advisor. It's not Angie.com, the new Angie.com, where you're going to pay $25, $35 a lead. This is free. There's no charge. I have 2 websites that are directory websites. I'll put you on there, and I'll personally give out your contact information when you have a customer in your area, and you do the job. Okay? I'd like to work together with you to do that, to get these customers taken care of. And I'm pushing hard to get these restoration kits out there so that people are not abused anymore, because they feel abused and lied to, especially from SubZero, because SubZero is just nothing we can do. You have to buy a new unit, and that's not true at all. I mean, it's just not. So I think that you can see that from this video if you listen to it with an open mind and just put 2 and 2 together. I mean, I added it up for you. It was just a misunderstanding back 30 years ago. Okay? So also for consumers to watch, but this was specifically, I wanted to specifically talk to the techs and let them know that I'm on your side. Okay? I just want to give you another resource that's been misunderstood for 30 years, and the younger generation may not be aware of that. Okay, so once again, it's refrigeratorpartreplacements.com, restoreyourrefrigerator.com, and you can find my contact information. I'm also on YouTube, ABA Appliance. Okay, so If you need help or need me to, even a technical assistance, get a hold of me. I also do Zoom. And take care. Help those customers out, please. Okay? And customers get a hold of me as well if they have questions. And I have all the kits, restoration kits for all the models on my websites. Okay? I don't deal with R12 compressors anymore. There's no reason to. They're garbage. Everything is a replacement to R134a. Okay? And it's not an issue at all. There's no sludging. It's not true. Okay? All right. Take care. Anything you need, just let me know. Once again, my name is Michael Riley. Okay? Thank you.